Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now today we're going to take a look at the Neo Henshin Cyborgs. Now if you've watched this channel before, you know that I'm a big fan of Micronauts and Microman, and these Henshin Cyborgs are another sort of part of this line. As you can see here, I have an original Henshin Cyborg on the right. These are based on the sort of Action Man and G.I. Joe bodies, but around the year 2000 they produced some new versions of them which are called Neo Henshin Cyborgs, and you can see them here on the left and the box one in the middle, and these are sort of modern interpretations of this vintage toy line. Now I've got a few of these, and on a recent trip to Tokyo I was very kindly given a few more by Stephen Kim, and he gave me one that he thought would be a good challenge for me because it has broken. As you can see here, this is a modern, I say modern, it's still about 20 years old, but a modern Neo Henshin Cyborg, and they are held together by a rubber sort of elasticated band that goes from the torso through a little ball into the pelvis section. But this one, the band has perish, and I would guess that this is something that's going to start happening more and more now that these figures are about 20 years old. This sort of rubber does tend to perish. So today we're going to take a look at trying to fix this. Now I've never taken one of these apart before, so this is all going to be new to me, but I'm sure that it can be sorted. So let's take a closer look at this cyborg and see what we can do. So here we have the poor unfortunate guy. As you can see, it is just three parts held together by a rubber band. If I bring in one that isn't broken, you can see exactly how he should look. So there's the rubber band inside, and he sort of sprung quite nicely. And this is a similar sort of construction to the original toys, where they had a bit of elastic that sort of held the two legs together going through the pelvis, and it sort of held it all in place. So it's a sort of modern version of the vintage toys. Now these toys luckily are actually held together with screws. The vintage ones aren't, so they're very hard to get into. You can see there are 3 screws on the back of this pelvis, and on the back of the body there should be some more screws, but let's remove his head and the sort of upper armour so that we can actually see what is going on. Now these figures are designed to be taken apart because you're supposed to be able to sort of swap limbs about, so the head does come off, and hopefully this sort of upper chest section as well, I should be able to pull over the little sort of robotic head, and that way we can get to see what's going on at the back of the figure. And you can see again there are a couple of screws here, 2 more at the bottom, and then this is the battery compartment. These figures do light up. There's a button here that you'd press and it would light up sort of the chest section, but generally it's worth removing the batteries from these because they, again, after 20 years have started to leak. So any of these figures I get, I remove the batteries straight away. So let's get the screwdriver out and we'll see what we can do about getting inside this figure. So I've got a little pot here that I can put the screws in because you don't want to lose those, and we'll start by taking this torso section apart. As I say, this is not a toy I've ever sort of actually bothered looking inside of, so it'd be interesting to see what's in there and see how easily this can be fixed, if at all. I would hope it can be fixed because it looks like a fairly simple thing to do. It's just a sort of rubber band. I think we can either make something out of using a large O-ring, or maybe even just a piece of elastic sort of tied in a loop. Just to see what sort of space we've got inside it once we get this thing apart. So that's the 2 upper screws removed. All the screws are the same size. So that's the last one, that's the last obvious screw. Maybe we have to take the battery compartment off as well. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, I think the battery compartment needs to be unscrewed as well. That's just held on with 1 small screw. We'll keep that one aside, and you can see this toy has obviously had the batteries left in it because there's actually a bit of corrosion already on the little battery compartment there, but it's what you would expect after 20 years with batteries left in a toy. So we can take that back section off. Now can we get into the front of this? There it is. We can remove the head. There must be some more screws somewhere in here. I'll have to do a little bit of investigating and see what I can find, because that doesn't look like it wants to come out at the moment. So let me do a little bit more investigating and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I've done a little bit of investigating off camera, and it appears we actually do have to remove this whole front clear panel because the 2 sections inside are held together with some other sort of clear strips that go right round the front. Now this front panel is held on, where we've taken 2 screws off from the back, you can actually see the clear plastic sort of goes right through this central silver section. So, but just by a careful bit of sort of wiggling, you can pull this section forwards, but you've got to do it sort of a little bit at a time either way, sort of using either side, and then that whole front section will pull out. And there you go, that's the front section off. It's just held in by these two sort of screw posts, and that's what, if I put that together, you can see that forms the outer shell. So now we've got into the sort of the inside of the Cyborg, and you can see here these are the bits that were holding the body sort of together, which is why I couldn't get the sort of that back silver section off. I think these look quite rubbery. Can I just pull these out with my finger? They seemed it when I was looking from the outside. Maybe a screwdriver or something will help. Oh yes, there you go. You can see those just ping out. I'm hoping they're different sizes. Let's just hold them. Yep, they're noticeably different sizes, so there's definitely a top and a bottom version, so I'm going to put those in my little pot there. We can do the same on this side. Like so. This is quite a fiddly toy, there's lots of layers to go to get to the central section. And now I'm hoping we can pull this sort of inner silver chest part apart. And we can. It is slowly, again it's all very sort of neatly held together. There we go, and now we're inside. That's what we want, because I think this is the important piece. This is where the elastic has broken, and you can see that is the perished piece of plastic. So for the moment I've moved the torso section apart, because we also need to get this pelvis apart, and I guess this will probably be the same sort of process. There's again 3 screws on the back, so I'm just going to undo those 3 screws. Like so, and then we can remove the outer clear section of the pelvis, put that to one side, and then there is an inner section, and this is where the elastic sort of is attached to, this sort of post that goes across the middle of the inner part of the pelvis. And again there's a single screw on the back of it, so if I undo that screw like so, again it's another awkward one. It looks like the legs have to be in a specific position to be able to open the pelvis. So I'm going to rotate the legs forward, and then there we go, I can pull off the back section of the pelvis, and we can access the bar that we need to attach the elastic to. So we've now got this figure apart. I've just got to work out what we can do to replace this. I'm going to have a look at either some O-rings or a bit of elastic and see what looks about the right size, because it doesn't look like it needs to be under that much tension, so I think an O-ring might do. Now if you fix a lot of toys, I would always suggest that you have a box of O-rings like this. This is something I picked up off eBay a good few years back. It costs about £5, and you get a huge selection of different sizes of O-rings, and these are always useful when fixing toys. Now I've picked out a couple from the selection. As you can see, I've got this one which I think is about a 3 centimetre diameter. You can see on this cutting board, so yeah, it's about 3 centimetres across, and if I squidge this down, it looks like it's about the same sort of length as the original bit of elastic there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 of these inside the toy so that it looks like that, because it gives it a bit of thickness, because you can see this original rubber is quite thick. So 2 of those inside should be enough to hold the toy together. So let's give this a go. As I say, this is the first time I've ever fixed one of these, so it may not work and we may come back and do something different, but I'm hopeful that this will be a good solution. So I'm going to start by putting the pelvis back together, and the first thing to do is obviously to slip those O-rings onto the pelvis, and I'm hoping that they actually sort of still fit in the little gap that's left there from the original rubber band, because the original rubber band is slightly thinner than this, but oh yeah, that seems to fit on quite nicely. So I can now, again, I've got to rotate the legs forwards as we did when we took it apart, and we can slot that back section on. I'll just pull the O-rings sort of out of the way. Like that, and we can start screwing this all together. It's just a case of reversing everything that we've done in the past, and we should get this back looking correct. Now that that inner section is screwed together, we can put the outer section on, which again just clips over the top, and then as we did before, there's the 3 screws to hold it together. And now I think will come the tricky part where we've got to put all of this back together with these slightly under tension. So let's get the torso ready and we'll see if we can clip everything together and get it screwed back up without it sort of pinging apart, because there's quite a lot of components to get this going, but I think we should be able to do it. So I've got everything sort of laid out here, and the first thing we need to do is attach this sort of pelvis upper ball joint thing. So we're going to squeeze these two O-rings together and pass them through. I think it might just require a pair of tweezers or something just to hook in there. So that's the ball sort of attached again. Now the part where it attaches into the upper chest is made out of two little pieces, so it's nice that these actually unclip. So I think we can just, if I can remember which way up these go, let me just get the body in. So you can see they go up that way. There's a sort of little lip that goes around the bottom, so we can hook that through one of these, and this is where you start to get a little bit of tension on the O-rings. Clip that front one on. Oh yeah, and that seems to hold quite nicely, so we can now slot this back into the body. I'm hoping that should just slot in there. And there's a little bit of tension on the O-rings, which is what you want. That's feeling pretty good, so we can bring the front part of the chest in with the other arm, and we'll clip that over the top, and we can see how well that's working. That doesn't look too bad at all. That's feeling pretty firm. So now we've just got to remember how all of this goes back together. So there were these plastic side sort of clips, so I'm going to call them ribs because they sort of look a little bit like ribs. I've just dropped one on the floor, so let me go find that. And these, there were two versions. There's a larger version and a smaller version, so I've just got to work out they're smaller ones and they're larger ones. We can see which way round they go. There's a definite front and back to them. So clip those on. That seems to clip on quite nicely. Likewise on that one. We do the same on this side. Definite front and back. Well, that's the bottom one. Got that wrong. It's a smaller one. There's the bigger one. So it's starting to look like a complete figure again. Now we can start putting his upper body together. Now this was the bit that was a little bit awkward because we've got these two screw posts that need to push into the front of the body, and they were fairly fiddly to get out, so I'm hoping oh no, that's good, they do clip in quite nicely. Then obviously we have the cyborg head, which has to clip on the top there, and then the back section, and then we can get this all screwed back together as well. That seems pretty firm. So let's get these screwed together and we'll see what he looks like once it's all sort of reattached. And here he is all back together. As you can see, the upper body is now attached to the pelvis again, and you can rotate him and he poses, well, just as well as the original did. In fact, I would say slightly better. The original elastic, if we go to this one, is a little bit sort of thick, so when you try to rotate his body it springs back, but the new O-rings that I've attached to this one mean that you can actually pose him and he stays in the right position. I think that's just the advantage of having two bits of elastic rather than one, but he does pose fully as you would expect. Now there is a slight sort of noticeable difference. As you can see, there is a white elastic there, and on this one you can see the black O-rings, but I don't think that really makes that much difference to the toy. It may be that you could actually buy some clear or white O-rings or some other elastic, but I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So it's not a toy I've ever fixed before, but as you can see, just with a little bit of tinkering and time, I've been able to get it back up and sort of displayable again. So a big thank you to Stephen Kim for very kindly giving me this broken figure on my recent trip to Tokyo. I do like to receive broken toys like this because it's nice to be able to get them back up and working, and hope that's been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.